Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Animal Control Advisory Board, November 3rd, 2021. I'm Pat Richardson chairing and I call this meeting to order. We're going to begin with roll call and I'm going to start at the end of this table.
Steve Tuttle here.
Rita Weaver.
Melissa Carnes.
Cesar Afanador, citizen member.
Joy Wilson, St. Mary's County Animal Control Supervisor.
Melinda Brown.
Susan Morris, Health Department.
Diane Harris.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of July 7th, 2021. I think everyone's had a chance to see and review the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Under committee reports, our next item, the Public Education and Outreach Subcommittee had a meeting on August 5th, 2021. Dr. Langford is the chair of this subcommittee. He is traveling and unable to be with us tonight, but he left notes that he wanted me to share. The Public Education and Outreach Subcommittee meeting was August 5th, 2021. In attendance, David Langford, chair, Melissa Carnes, Joy Wilson, myself, and guests Darlene Mund and Alice Burton. Topics discussed were the need to engage the animal organizations serving St. Mary's County, a process for disseminating public information through social media, and the timing of such releases, the lack of personnel currently to manage an interactive social media presence at this time, the development of a definition of the purpose of the shelter to be submitted to the Director of Emergency Services, and the need for the name of the shelter to reflect the function and purpose of the shelter. In addition, Melissa agreed to draft a letter to the animal support groups alerting them to the shelter's status and recognizing their ongoing contributions to animal rescue. We're going to talk a little bit later in the meeting with a presentation on the possibility of building a communication plan where we will be able to address this. Are there any questions about the subcommittee meeting?
I have a question. Was a letter sent out?
No, the letter was not sent out because we later discovered that advisory boards do not have the authority to send direct letters out. This is a process that has to go through the county commissioners, and that's when I asked Elisa Cassis if she could assist us as the public information director of communications for St. Mary's County. She'll be presenting later on the agenda.
What about the purpose of the shelter? Was that something that your committee then will be coming up with ideas for?
We will. We have had some initial discussions with the whole group on making successful adoptions of animals one of our main functions. We also will be housing the animal control group. So we want to make sure that the name reflects the functions as well, and people in the community are able to quickly access it once it's open. Okay, the next item is shelter update and discussion, and for that I'm going to ask Mr. Walker to come up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so in a few minutes, I'm going to ask Mr. Drew Carey to come up and talk about the construction. I'll give you a little bit of information I have before we get into that. One of the things, if you are on Facebook, you may have seen it. So we have now posted the shelter manager position. So what happened was I went last month to the commissioners and I asked them to fund that position beginning January 1st. That was not in this year's budget. It was taken out because we just weren't sure when we would be opening. Again, I think Mr. Carey will talk about this in a little bit. Mr. Kelly will talk in a little bit, but the last date I saw, I think on a form today, was we anticipate the shelter will be finished mid-July of 2022. Still on schedule, could be a little bit sooner, but we have to have our shelter manager in place, writing policies, hiring people, getting people ready to go. So that's where we're on track right now. So that was posted. If you see it, if you think you missed something that's not there that we've discussed, trust me that your words were heard. I hear what you want. I hear what you think we need that is going to be incorporated in this process that we go through to find the right person. So absolutely, you guys were involved in this, and it's important to know that. But getting this approved this early and moving forward is a huge accomplishment, I feel, for us, all of us, to get this done. And I think if we can get them in place by January 1st, we'll be in good shape. It's a very tall order for this person. They're going to be given a marching order that they have to have that shelter ready to be up, open, and ready July. And they've got to have all their staff in place. And we'll just see how it goes. So certainly we'll be coming back to you from time to time for help, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But that's a big thing, that it really is. As far as the actual shelter and the grounds, I think, Mr. Kelly, if you want to come up, and I can move out of the way. Unless somebody else has any questions about what I've already talked about with the shelter manager.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've had a lot of progress since the last time we met. Sorry we weren't able to give you an update in September, but we've gone ahead and wrapped some of the update that we had planned on giving you then, along with the current progress into tonight's presentation. Do you have it up?
I have it up. I'm waiting for Amy to grab the camera. There you go.
There you go. Okay. Next slide. So progress from the last meeting, we have installed all the masonry walls. All of the under slab utilities have been placed. The concrete was poured in August. Framing of both the main structure and the large animal barn are complete. Shingles were installed a couple weeks ago. Water and sewer has been installed. Curb and gutter went in, last bit of it went in last week. Smeco and Washington Gas connections have been brought to the building, but they're not turned on yet at this time. And then actually, since I wrote this, we actually have about half of the base asphalt installed as well. Next slide. Current construction activities that are going on are the electrical rough-ins, plumbing and gas. Most of the interior gas piping is actually complete, but some of the domestic water lines are still being run. Windows are being installed as we speak. Ductwork is being installed, and as I just mentioned, the base course paving. Good portion of that went down before all that rain rolled through on Friday, which was a good thing.
Already did it.
Yeah. So developments and changes from our last meeting. Some of these have resulted in change orders in the project. Some of them were needed for operations in the building, maintenance. We've added some floor drains into a couple of the animal housing areas that weren't shown on the original plan sets that we shared with you guys. We did identify some moisture in some of the soils before we poured the slab. Got a late call one Wednesday night. We found a unidentified 12-inch water line under FDR Boulevard. We were able to get resolved that evening, but if you had driven by in late August, you might have seen a big hole in the road out in front of the facility there. Fire suppression system. There's a little back and forth with the fire marshal and the design team about that, but in the attic and then also out over the exterior kennel areas, we've included a dry fire suppression system so that there isn't any issues with freezing in the colder months. The barn orientation, we ended up rotating so that the stalls could actually be accessed directly from the parking lot. And then a maintenance item was to add drywall to the underside of the trusses to allow for a blown insulation to be installed at a different county facility. Where we didn't do that, we ended up having some sprinkler lines break in the past. So we're trying to be proactive there and not repeat the same mistakes. Some of these photos show the trusses being placed. Sorry, you've already gone to the next one. So the top photo here shows the back side of the animal shelter, where all the dog kennels are. You can see some of the curb and gutter being placed, and then I don't know if the gentleman in the right is installing the underslab gas pipe or if that's plumbing vent, but one of those two items are currently being installed. Scheduled to complete. We do believe the building's going to be weather tight sometime in January. We should be starting interior finishes in April. And as Mr. Walker said, we are anticipating a July completion. Opening, I think, depends more on his shelter manager after that point. You can see some of this from the road if you want to go to the next slide. You can see the front entrance there of the building. And then the photograph to the right is the large animal structure. And you can see where we now have the doors facing the exterior so that you can back a trailer up, be able to bring an animal directly in without having to take them down a hallway or anything. I think that's everything that I have. I don't know, John, you want to add anything to that?
Is there a change in the floor finishes too?
We have not confirmed that, but yes, we are in the process. John recently got permission from the commissioners, recently got permission from the commissioners to upgrade the floors in the facility. Originally, they were spec'd to be like a medical grade sheet vinyl, and we are working towards having a epoxy flooring system put throughout the facility, much more robust, industrial, easier to clean, sanitize. A good thing for the project. So
Yeah, that plus the floor drains you added, I think, are going to make it a lot easier to maintain.
yeah. Any questions?
Do we have questions for Drew?
Now, the epoxy the flooring, that will be in the kennel area also?
All of the dog kennels actually previously did have the epoxy floor. We are extending it to all of the cat areas, the hallways, and we're actually just pretty much anywhere you're going to have a flooring system that isn't like a tile, like in the lobby. It's going to be epoxy.
Okay.
So there was concerns about Joy. If you want to talk
The
about
main
that.
concern was cleaning and disinfecting, and we all know it is an animal shelter, so even if it's an office, what's the chances of an animal being in there with somebody? We wanted to be able to disinfect everywhere, and Mr. Walker will attest to the fact that I kind of stomped my feet quite a bit about it until the entire floor was epoxy throughout.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joy.
It's been my one big push, so I'm pretty pleased with it.
Your only push?
Well, it's been the one biggest. It's been the biggest one. It's the biggest one, so big one.
Yeah. And that, again, John went to the commissioners and asked.
Money from
For-
other projects. Thank you, Steve. Help make that happen.
So, and was approved by the commissioners as well.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, it had to go through the commission.
Well, we appreciate the update, and several of us drive by frequently, so if there have been any reports of suspicious cars, it's maybe someone here, so we do appreciate that. Is there anything else for Drew? Okay, then I'm going to ask Mr. Dietrich to take your place for a minute. Mr. Dietrich, you have announced your retirement, and I'm thinking this may be your last official ACAB meeting, but...
Oh, it is, isn't it?
But you're always welcome here, so anytime you find some free time, you are certainly welcome to be here. You have been with us from the beginning of the shelter construction process, and you are certainly a key figure in the construction of this animal shelter. On behalf of the ACAB, I want to thank you for encouraging us to provide input, for listening patiently to all of that input, and trying to incorporate it right up to tonight with the announcement of the epoxy in the hallways. We are especially grateful to you for your leadership on moving this project through, and we would like to now present you with a plaque that reads, "Presented to John Dietrich, Director of Public Works and Transportation, with our deepest appreciation for making this dream a reality. 2021 from the Animal Control
Beautiful.
Advisory Board." So maybe if you, Rita, if you could stay there, if Mr. Dietrich and we could get a couple pictures from our professional photographer.
Yeah, so. I am going to miss this,
Well,
so I'm going to definitely watch from afar,
okay,
up close too.
okay.
Thank you.
We wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. We're going to stay in.
Good, very
Stay
good, very good. Well, if the family needs to consider an adoption of a new
Right.
animal, you know where we'll be. The next item we have is the shelter name recommendation, and I'm going to ask Mr. Walker to come forward for that.
Thank you. Okay, so this is something we had brought before you some time ago, and I don't think we quite got there. I think we're okay though, we're in good shape. I think that the original semblance of a name that we had suggested, let me go back here and take a look at what we had said. I think we had talked about the Animal Resource and Adoption Center, I think something along those lines. I think that's where we are. So the commissioners are now anxious to move forward and do this and get this named. So they are asking you as the board to provide a recommendation if you desire. You certainly don't have to, and then they would make a recommendation. The commissioners have a way for people to communicate to them, and that's by email. Well, they received an email from a person in the community, I believe she is a former county employee, and she has recommended that we name the shelter after Tony Malaspina. Tony Malaspina was the animal control supervisor for many years before he passed away just a couple of years ago. So that's one of the considerations. Now, how do we incorporate that? How do we name it? Do we do that? That's something that, again, we're looking to you as a board to consider. You know, what do you think? He was a wonderful man, absolutely wonderful. I like to say that, people in my department think of him as, what was our department? Psychiatrist. They would have a rough day, they'd go in and sit down and talk with him, but he was also rock solid on animal control. He was a fair person, did a great job. So does that rise to this level? I think that's something you need to decide and something the commissioners need to decide. The person that wrote that letter, Ms. Fran Hammett, is here. I believe. I don't know if she wants to have a discussion or if you want to try and ask questions, but she is here. I commend her for taking that step and reaching out and doing that. So again, Tony was a wonderful person. But I'm going to stop there and let you bring it up for discussion or ask questions.
Would Mrs. Hammett like to say anything? Would you like to say?
You can sit here and I'll move.
Welcome, welcome. You're among friends.
Well, my name is Fran Hammett, and I am a former county employee. Thank you for having me here tonight. I watched the July meeting, and I kind of feel like I'm coming to the dance a little bit late. I don't want to throw a wrench into anybody's plans, but I'd just like to share my opinion. Tony began his employment with St. Mary's County on October in 1997, and just a short year later, he was promoted to animal control supervisor. In 98, he was the first animal control supervisor in the county. Tony was exceptionally professional in his actions and his demeanor. He was extremely competent in his duties and an all-around great man. I got to know Tony quite well when the county combined the IT department where I worked and emergency services. I always got to work early, and he would get to work early, sometimes 6 a.m. We were both at our desk. He'd call me to check on me. I'd call him to check on him. And he was just exceptional. He would tell me about his repeat callers. Some of them, he knew they were going to call the same time every day and complain about something. Some of them were quite nasty, but he handled them. He always spoke with them with courtesy, patience, and empathy. He was a class act and a true gentleman. A lot of employees went to him with problems, and he always had constructive advice, and he never betrayed your privacy. His name will always be associated with the Animal Control Office by county employees and the public citizens he served. If it's not possible to name the building after him, I would like to see the Animal Control Supervisor office named after him, and I think that would be a fitting tribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come out and to help us who didn't have the pleasure of meeting Tony get a chance to know him a little bit better. I do know that he had a tremendous impact on the people in animal control, and I have just heard so many wonderful things about him.
You always will.
But we really appreciate you coming out and taking the time to
Thank you
share
for having
with
me.
us, of course. We have several options. We can choose not to recommend any names. We can choose to recommend one name or more than one name. And you did receive on board docs in your packet the county standards for naming and dedicating facilities. And before we open it up for suggestions, I just want to call your attention to Standard 1, which speaks to that it is the responsibility of the Board of County Commissioners to make the final selection. And Standard 5, that they will carefully consider community recommendations, so anyone in the community can feel free to submit a suggestion if they would like. And Standard 9, which speaks to the naming of a portion of a county facility, for example, the supervisor's office or wing, and how you would go about doing that. So with that said, I'm going to just open it up and see if anyone has a suggestion that you'd like to have us consider. Once we have our suggestions, then we'll discuss for a few minutes and then see if we have a motion. Any suggestions?
Well, first, I want to thank Ms. Hammett for coming and speaking and telling us about Tony. Yeah, I really appreciate it, getting to know him a little bit better this way. I do think it would be very appropriate to be either naming a wing or the office in memory of Tony.
Okay. Do we have any suggestions for names?
So I don't know if we captured previously, I submitted a suggestion for a name, I can't tell if that's picking me up, for Adopt St. Mary's as the shelter name.
I also thought about St. Mary's Animal Rescue and Adoption Center. I don't know if that was mentioned or not, but.
Could we go over, like, I know, Mr. Walker, you had put something out there. Could you kind of revisit that, please?
I think it was, I have it written here. I think it was the Animal Resource and Adoption Center. Isn't that right there, Joy?
It was one of our
Animal Resource and
recommendations, yes. Yes.
Correct, Animal Resource and Adoption Center, that's what we said.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a couple other very good suggestions, so.
I think we had said service. That was another one, animal.
What about
I had been
rehabilit-
given two others. One was St. Mary's County Animal Adoption and Resource Center, and one was Animal Adoption and Animal Services. And are there any other additions to the list?
What about rehabilitation added to that? Are we going to be doing any rehabbing for our animals, or is it just going to be adoption at this time?
I can't tell you it would be rehab, we may get there, but that's not the initial plan. I mean, it certainly is traditional, but adoption's a primary focus for us.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any of these names, and I'll read them one more time, that you want to pursue right now? One is Adopt St. Mary's. Two is St. Mary's Animal Rescue and Adoption Center. Three is Animal Resource and Adoption Center. Four is St. Mary's County Animal Adoption and Resource Center. And five, Animal Adoption and Animal Services.
I like having St. Mary's County leading it, whether we say animal resource and adoption or animal adoption and resource, but I do like to have the St. Mary's County there in the name.
I second that. Do you like that idea?
Okay. Do we have other people who wish to offer any comments?
Just talking about the shelter name at this point, not the interior,
Right.
okay?
Right.
Do we have an idea of what resources are going to be offered if we're naming it a resource center?
I mean, adoption certainly will have some care, you know, as you know, we don't have a veterinarian at this time. I mean, you know, what's a shelter? It's a place that we're going to be taking animals to take care of. So, you know, is there going to be extensive other resources? I can't tell you that at this time. We're certainly going to build on that. We're going to be building on volunteer services to help us. It's just too soon to talk about how much the scope of this is, so.
I like that name, but I was asking the question because right now, to me, resource center indicates there's
Agreed.
host of services, and that's my concern and hesitance with that name, but otherwise I do like the name.
The other end of the resource to me, would be the fact that Animal Control Division will be in that department, and we do provide
Right.
resources to the public. And I say that from a point of view of, I believe, I've had a conversation a couple times where I like the way Linda Kelly had named their animal shelter. But when you drive by their sign and the bottom of it says "and animal control," it's almost like it's an afterthought. I want them to realize that we are too housed there and that we too present that positive image. So that's also where that part of the resource center comes in, because basically we're already doing that in the public. So I think it's one of the things, that's why we talked about either the word resource or services,
Right.
either as animal services or as an animal resource center. So.
Well, you're going to have educational resources there too, to educate the public.
We will. I anticipate resources will expand a lot, and there will be all kinds of resources and information, a lot of help for people in the community. We already do that, you know. So Joy, one of the things we do is we have indigent people in the community that they can't feed their animals, but they still have animals. So we will at times give them food. So I think resource is a good name. I think it's going to expand dramatically. To tell you what the list is at this moment, I can't. But I do think that's a very appropriate name, because we are going to be a resource for the community. That's the intent of this. It truly is. So
I think the main calls that are going to start to come in quickly are going to be people who are interested in adopting an animal and people who are trying to reach animal control because there's an issue.
correct.
So I tried to think about, if I'm a person looking for help, animal help, and I go to the computer and search, what's a quick way to try to find the facility that has that in St. Mary's County? And so I also think St. Mary's County Animal Adoption and Resource Center covers. I'm going to ask one of our presenters to make a comment.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Alice Spurton, and I was kind of chomping at the bit over there. So I've just moved back here recently. I grew up in Calvert and was in Northern Virginia for 25 years. I was only 3 when I moved there, but I was 25. It was 25 years. So I was an animal control officer, chief of animal control for 14 years in Arlington, Virginia. And I travel all over the country visiting shelters. And what we've seen, especially over the last 10 years, are the shelters evolving, and as they're either remodeling or they're building new shelters, the names have become more enticing to the public. It's not just animal shelter, it's not just, and we don't, we never use the slang pound anymore, or at least we shouldn't. Just like we shouldn't say dog catcher, but I had brought forth to a lot of the folks in the committee a resource center, because the animal shelter should be the end-all for animals, for the county, and the folks who have animals, and not just that have animals, but want to help animals. They may be in a situation where they can't adopt a pet, but they can come in and foster. So, you'll have fosters, you'll have volunteers coming in there, you're going to have, this is just what I envision, and living just 5 minutes from where the new shelter will be, I hope to be a part of the shelter, and, it's where hopefully you'll have the low-cost or free vaccination clinics. Maybe one day, you'll have a spay-neuter clinic in there. It's where they can come and say, hey, listen, my cat, he's peeing outside of the litter box. I love him. I don't want to give him up. What can I do? You're going to have behaviorists in there. It's, like I say, this is a resource. It should be a resource center. And you'll be able to give them all of these different things. And, maybe there will be a room where people can rent that room. You can have birthday parties for kids and help educate them about animals. So that's why I think it's so important, the resource center part. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Is there a motion on this title? This seems to be the one that several people are interested in. Would anyone like to make a
I'll
motion?
make a motion that we suggest to the commissioners that we name the new shelter the St. Mary's County Animal Adoption and Resource Center.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor signify.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion passes, so that will be our first recommendation. Now we want to look at that second recommendation. That will be Standard 9, naming or dedicating a portion of the building. And I think Mrs. Hammett has made a very strong case, and I sense that there is support for this. And it kind of makes sense that if we're having the animal control group in that building, that area or wing certainly could be dedicated to, named after Tony. Are there any concerns or objections to doing something like that? So, in other words, we would send double recommendations to the county commissioners. Name of the shelter, and that we would also like to have them, from the very beginning, name that room or name that wing.
I think naming opportunities are a huge part of a successful building. And to be able to kick it off with Tony, I had the pleasure of working with him, just sets a standard that if we have another member of the community that we need a significant gesture, that we have set the standard right from the opening, that we do have naming opportunities, that we could always come back and name another area for another, significant person working towards animal rescue in our community. So I love the idea of the wing.
Do I hear a motion?
Sure. So I will make a motion that we suggest to the commissioners that we name the Animal Control Supervisor's Wing in memory of Tony Malaspino.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion also carries. So I'll draft a letter on behalf of the Animal Control Advisory Board, and we will send that to Steve first, and then he can move it along to the county commissioners.
Thank you for both of those. And I will also send a letter of support for your motions. I think they're both very good motions, and I appreciate your action on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is under new business, and we have a guest, but really a person who's very at home in this room, Elisa Cassis, and I'm going to ask her to come up.
I'm going to give a very quick lead into that. So
Okay.
I remember that you as a board had planned on sending a letter out. I think Diane asked about it earlier. And again, you and I had talked about it, Madam Chairman, about that process, and I became a little bit concerned about this board is advisory. You certainly, as I do, answer to the commissioners, and I wanted to make sure that this information went out the right way. But I also know the caliber of our public information officer, and I think there's some help there for us in getting really good information out. She is stellar. She is phenomenal, world-class public information officer. If she's going to help this board in getting information out, we're in good shape. But I'm going to let her come up.
Thank you.
Goodness.
Elisa, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's a pleasure to be here. You're doing some very important work, and you're going to be a permanent part of St. Mary's County history. 25 years from now, when that animal shelter is thriving, have you stopped and thought about that for a moment? You really are going to be a part of St. Mary's County history forever. Exciting. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. Thank you for inviting me here to speak tonight regarding St. Mary's County government communication policies, process, and practices. St. Mary's County government is committed to ensuring that our residents receive timely and accurate information so they can make informed decisions and have awareness of the many projects and initiatives their tax dollars are funding. As such, the Public Information Office operates under an established policy of communications that define engagements with the public and with the media. This defined policy allows for clear communications, timely delivery, and also charts a path for information to flow from all departments to the broadest reach of our community residents. There are many methods employed by St. Mary's County government to deliver these messages. For instance, the commissioners, the county administrator, the department directors, and the communications director are authorized to speak directly to the media on behalf of county government. Written letters, as we discussed earlier this evening, are a form of communication that the commissioners, the county administrator, and department directors may employ as needs present themselves. A primary medium of communication for St. Mary's County government is a formal news release. News releases are distributed directly from the Public Information Office to over 24 media agencies, including print, radio, TV, and online mediums. Additionally, news releases are sent to county residents who have signed up to receive automatic notifications. Information from these news releases is also distributed through St. Mary's County government social media platforms, including Facebook and Twitter. The decision to distribute a news release is based on established criteria, including impact, proximity, prominence, timeliness, and human interest. County government communications that don't merit a full news release may receive social media posts and/or a full social media campaign. Additional means of communication include formal web pages on the county government website, department, or division social media platforms. All social media platforms used by departments or divisions must adhere to the St. Mary's County government social media policy. In order to effectively and efficiently deliver information and provide relevant details, the Public Information Office and several county departments develop and maintain communication plans that detail timelines, messages, and audiences. These communication plans involve strategic and tactical components that consider many dynamics and are developed specifically to deliver clear messages to the most appropriate audience in the most effective time frame. Some of the current active communication plans we have are for events such as inclement weather and various emergency situations. Communication plans are also developed as situations evolve and circumstances arise. For instance, St. Mary's County pivoted to provide career emergency service responders for the first time this year in 2021. Previously, as I'm sure everyone in this room is aware, all EMS services had been provided exclusively by volunteers. This seismic shift in services, and frankly, in our county's culture, necessitated a need for a robust communications plan that included news releases, social media posts, and a full video campaign on St. Mary's County Government Channel 95 and the county's YouTube channel. It was imperative that our community hear exactly how our emergency medical services are covered. Lives are at stake, and we recognize our sacred responsibility to the community. Now, what we're here to talk about tonight regarding communications for the new animal shelter in our community, you, as the Animal Control Advisory Board, are in a unique position to receive input from many people in our community, analyze that information through the lens of a board member, and provide invaluable advice to Director Walker and the commissioners that will impact our two-legged and our four-legged residents. You are subject matter experts. That's why you are on this advisory board. And as you communicate your knowledge to Director Walker, to the commissioners, and later to the animal shelter manager, your recommendations have the potential to create awareness in our community and to draw people into the vision for this new facility. Thank you for what you do for our community and for bringing your advice and perspective to this board. And as completion of the facility draws near, and as staff are hired and formal policies are developed, St. Mary's County government will look to your advice to develop and deliver a communications plan. I hope this information is helpful. Thank you.
Lisa, what would be the next steps for us?
The next steps are going to navigate around timelines. Since the shelter isn't finished and we're just in the process of hiring staff, the first thing we would look at is timelines. Once we have a definitive date when the shelter will be completed and their staff is on board and policies are being developed, then we'd be able to communicate that to the community at large.
I think what drove this initially was our discussion at the subcommittee meeting, where we felt like we do have the groups that have worked with animal welfare all along for a long time and contributed so much. We wanted them to be treated specially because of the work that they do, and we want them to continue to work with us. We would be depending on them to make sure that the shelter is a success. So do you think it would be possible for us to get a letter out in advance of the opening, at least several months in advance of the opening, to let them know it's coming? Is that something that's doable, do you think?
So I'm going to have to defer to Director Walker. My purview tonight, because I've not had the pleasure of participating in any of these meetings or really following very closely, my purview is to present policies and processes and procedures, and the way that letters are delivered from St. Mary's County government comes directly from a director, from a request from a board, or from the commissioners. So I would have to defer to Director Walker about when such a letter might be able to be presented to the commissioners. Is this something that we can send out? Is this the way that we're going to communicate? And what is the appropriate timeline for doing something like that?
Okay, and I'm not going to ask you to go through that. I'm going to give you some time to think about this.
Absolutely.
Shortly after the meeting, as Mr. Walker is coming up, shortly after the meeting, Dr. Langford, it occurred to Dr. Langford that the other group that we wanted to be most sure that we included early on was the local veterinarians, who have also given time and worked with animal welfare to support nonprofits and other groups that are dealing with that. So he also would be interested and would be drafting a letter similar to what Melissa has done.
If I could make a recommendation, just spur of the moment. Sometimes when you're in the middle of something and your head's down and you're really grinding it and you're working it and you're thinking about details, it's hard to look up and take a broad view. The broad view that I would suggest that is immediately accessible is invite them to come to these meetings. You allow public participation in your meetings, you welcome it. Invite them to come and to share in these conversations. That is, under the purview of what you do as an advisory board, and would give you an opportunity, in my opinion, to hear what they have to say. And then because you are an advisory board, you've collected this data in this perfect setting, because remember, these meetings are broadcast live on Channel 95, and then they're on YouTube in perpetuity. We also have them on our county website so people can access. And this is a phenomenal opportunity to get the message out. And I would encourage that, to invite people to come to your meetings. Like I said, we're grinding it out and we're thinking it's a meeting and this is our purpose, is the meeting. But really, it's an excellent opportunity to ask the community and invite them into what is taking place and to see how county government works and the hard work that you as residents are giving of your time to provide.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, did you want to add something?
So the question you asked her, could you repeat that for me, the one about putting it out in a timely manner?
Our goal was to send a letter to now both groups, the animal rescue, animal welfare groups, and also the local veterinarians, doing two things: letting them know that this is coming and an estimated timeline, but also recognizing them for the work that they have been doing leading up to us having our own shelter.
I don't see any issues with doing that. I think we need to work through it and develop one. We should be doing it collectively together. For me, looking to Elise, she's a resource that will help make sure we're doing it the right way. Bringing her tonight and contacting her was in no way a break. It was more to just slow down and make sure we do it right. It was not a blocking move. What the Public Education Committee is doing needs to be done. Let's just make sure we do it right. So I say, let's proceed with it. Let's make the plans. I'll consult with her and we'll proceed.
Okay.
It will work. I don't see any issues. Let's just make sure that we're doing what the commissioners want.
Okay. Are there other comments or questions?
I was wondering, I'm new on this board and I don't know everything that's going on. And I was wondering, you said that we were going to send the list of suggestions for names for the shelter to Steve, and then he can pass it on to the commissioners. We don't deal directly with the commissioners?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, we're looking forward to working with you, and we'll really
Ditto.
appreciate your continued guidance.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do for our community and for your passion. And people forget that these boards are volunteer, so props for your volunteering. Thank you.
Thank you
Have a good
very
evening.
much. The next one is a quick one, and that is, you did receive the list of dates for our meetings. We meet every other month. In 2022, we have given you the dates, and if it happens that we need to call a special meeting, we can do that. It has been a little bit difficult to do that, and the more advance notice we have, the greater the chance we can reserve this room and get into that. But I just would ask, we do need approval of the schedule for 2022. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the 2022 calendar year meeting dates as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. The next topic is, we're going to begin with cat colonies, and Director Walker is going to present that. And that's going to be followed by trap, neuter, and return, and Alice Burton is going to then present for us.
Okay, controversial subject, we know. However, I think there's some good things here that we're going to talk about. So in addressing this, as we got into it, certainly I've heard about, cat colonies and feral cats and a lot about it, but certainly that, my job has been law enforcement, it hasn't been. So anyway, I've done a lot of research and I've got some things I'm going to share that I've found. It's really not for me to sit here and dispute with you, it's just to kind of give you information. The purpose of me giving you this is really to help highlight some things that I've found. I've also got some information here that I'm going to share with you. So really, if you think about where we are at this point, the commissioners have heard your voices. Okay, they want to know what you feel. They want a recommendation on where we should go with this. So, again, some of the research, and again, we'll go through it here in just a minute. What I'd like to do is give you some tools for you to perhaps, if you decide to do it, is maybe form a committee and come up with a solution or an idea on how we deal with cat colonies. Again, I've learned a lot about it in doing a lot of research on this. Again, some things you might disagree. I'm sure we have an expert over here that might, but I'm going to tell you what I've found. Is it factual? I mean, as much as I know. So just some interesting things. So in doing the research, I've read it myself and also with the county attorney's office Feral cats and feral dogs, by the way, are actually defined as wild animals. They are not domesticated animals. They are wild as described by Maryland COMAR, that's Code of Maryland Regulations, that's Maryland state law. Very interesting. Maryland Department of Natural Resources, they claim they have no jurisdiction in this matter as feral cats are domesticated animals. I recontacted them and I cited the Maryland law where it classifies feral cats as wild animals. They did not respond to that communication, so I've not heard anything more from them. U.S. Navy, that is an important part of us because they're right on the edge of our jurisdiction. They are within our community. They don't allow feral cats on the naval base. They have a concern they will attract vultures threatening aircraft from bird strikes. Of course, Lexington and Manor Paso Park is in close proximity to the base, so we certainly have a concern. Their response, by the way, is much stronger than the counties in responding to calls for feral cats, but that's the government. St. Mary's County government, we have no policies on euthanasia as you would think of euthanasia in an office. We don't have a shelter, so we do not have a policy on it. We do have times when we have to destroy animals. That's unfortunate. It's by policy. When that occurs, it's from injured animals or immediate threats. If the owner of that animal is on scene, we don't make that decision. We let the owner make that decision. If we have to, we do. Each animal dispatch requires the animal to be photographed, report written, and then I receive an immediate email about them having to discharge a weapon and dispatch an animal. And it's unfortunate, but it's part of it. Decision to euthanize an unintended injured animal in a veterinarian setting, we don't have any control over that. We know that the shelter does that, but we don't have a shelter. We do not control that. That's the shelter's policies, and again, we don't have policies on that. The only other euthanization time is when an animal is declared dangerous, and that's something that comes to me to make that decision. So in other words, the scenario is Joy and her excellent team will pick up an animal that's declared dangerous because they've attacked somebody and the animal is. So she comes to me. But before I decide to destroy or have an animal destroyed or put down because of that, then I go to the county attorney's office and we review the case. And they say, yes, I think it's appropriate. So that's how that occurs. Again, there's a process in the Tri-County Animal Shelter. I'm not really going to get into their decisions, but they have a very structured procedure for euthanizing. Kittens are not euthanized. The shelter turns all kittens over to rescue groups, and they're found homes. As we know, unfortunately, adult feral cats are untrainable and ultimately face euthanasia due to the danger they pose. So unfortunately, that's what they're going to face. I mean, I know there's been some comments about our shelter and you know, how we're going down the path to what we're going down. The commissioners of St. Mary's County have declared this as a low-kill, no-kill shelter. In the job description of this shelter manager that we have just posted, requires that person to maintain that shelter as a low-kill, no-kill shelter. Again, learning a lot about this field. That means we must maintain a 90% adoption rate of animals going out. 90%. That's from the American Humane Society. So that is our goal, that is our mission, that is the mission of the animal shelter manager. That is what we will uphold. Whatever is occurring at the shelter up the road or whatever is occurring with cat colonies in this park has nothing to do with the policies we will build for our animal shelter. We are at a point where we have little options on what we do. Do we trap? We've tried to trap some cats down there. We haven't caught a one. It's probably because some people are trying to impede that, but that's the way it is. But we have not caught one cat down at that location. Are we going to trap? I have policies to follow. If you can change those policies, please do so. But I have policies. I have no choice. So it is where we are. Am I for it or opposed to it? I guess I'm not allowed to have that public opinion, so that's where we are. All right, so Darlene, if you'll help me and deliver each of the members a copy of this, and then we'll go over that. I know you're not a member, but
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, this is just some research material. I'm no expert on this. This is stuff that might help you, but there are some interesting things. So, and I don't know if there's enough for everybody. I hope so. So Calvert County, the first document, this is an agreement that Calvert County has established with a local rescue group to allow for that to occur. And when I say that, that is to allow for a cat colony in a specific location they've identified. Important parts that I see of this is that, and I don't see how we will be able to do it, that we're not going to manage anything with cat colonies. We'll certainly work with whoever does that, but we just don't have the resources to be the managing. So we need to identify an organization that will be glad to do this. We have to identify a location for animals. I know that, Diane, you're very much against moving these. I don't know if that's a possibility to leave them there or not. Again, that's something that we need to discuss as we move forward. Next page is an actual, something I pulled off the internet, and I don't really recall the jurisdiction. This is an actual policy. Now, you got to remember the policies are what we would write within our department that would guide us how we would allow that to function within the county and how our animal control would administer it. Again, these are resources for you as a committee if you decide to do that. Next one is, as you see, Baltimore County has passed the CARE Act for cats, and that allows that, so it is something that's occurring. The next one is a law and policy brief. Many of you are familiar with that organization, Alley Cat Allies. Maybe that, again, can offer some resources. And then the last one I found was a Managing Cat Colonies from a Dr. Julie Levy, I guess. But again, these are intended, you know, the commissioners are asking for your help. This is something I tried to offer to you as help. The only thing I would offer is if you're able to come to a fairly quick conclusion, perhaps you can do a special meeting so that we could get this recommendation back to the commissioners. And Diane, you had asked that the way the process works is you have many boards and committees in the county, and just about every one you have a staff support. Well, that's what I am, and then my staff support who's invaluable in what we do. But anyway, that's the way it works. So then it comes back to me, and then I send it over to my staff sends it over to the commissioners. That's just the process. That's the way it works. So, but I'll try to answer your questions. I'm really not to dispute this because it's not my decision. This is what the commissioners would like to do. Again, they have heard you. They sound like they are receptive, but I can't speak for them. So I'll try to do my best.
Are there questions for Steve?
Yes.
Melinda?
I have a question. You spoke to having, it wasn't an ordinance, I'm sorry, you said there was maybe a policy or a process in place that you have to follow when you talked about, am I going to have to trap these cats? And if you can get that changed, what is that policy process, whatever it is that you're saying you have to follow?
We have policies that when we get stray animals, we go out and we try to remove them.
If we're going to try and change something, can we have access to the exact language of that?
And you can find it on the internet.
Is it in the ordinance?
It is the ordinance. Right.
Okay, I have the ordinance here.
And there's by the way, our ordinance is very limited, and Joy can speak to some of this, that there were some efforts a few years ago to minimize these, and I don't know its history, and I don't have any idea why things were done, but our ordinances are a bit limited, so.
I might have a dense question here, and I might sound a little stupid on my response, but I'm a practical guy. If we don't feed the cat colonies anymore, and they are considered wild animals, they are feral, wouldn't they move to a different location?
They've been fed for 10 years.
I understand that, but wouldn't they be moved? If you stop feeding an animal, it's going to find another food source, am I correct?
Or die.
Or die and starve.
Yeah.
I mean, they are feral and wild, so I mean, if they are considered wild by the ordinance, if we stop feeding them, they will move on and find another food source.
Right.
Is that true, false?
I mean, they're going to. I mean, that's just animal nature, that they're hungry, they're going to go find food wherever they find it, so, yes.
Okay, that was just,
Animals that have been fed every day for 10 years don't know that, and I don't think that they're going to survive. I think you'd be killing that entire colony.
Correct.
I'm going to make a suggestion. I think one thing that we could do, we've been invited to participate. We've been asked for a recommendation from this board. We know there's a time. We can't take 6 months to do this. So my suggestion would be, if there's interest, if I could get someone from this board to agree to chair a subcommittee that would have maybe 4 members, and it also would be open to anyone in the community that wanted to be a part of it. If that subcommittee could draft the changes or the recommendation that you would like to see, and we have to be thinking long-term, because this is something that is going to continue. We want to be much better prepared. That could either, and I'll defer to you, Steve, it could either go through the county attorney's office first to make sure that everything is doable, workable, correct. Then it would come to this board, and this board could discuss and vote on it.
It's a good idea.
Or it may work the other way, where it comes to this board first. The difficulty is we won't have the legal knowledge to know what is doable and what's not. So
I can certainly help you work with the county attorney's office, or you can work direct, but I can certainly try to make that happen in a timely manner.
So if we got a draft from the subcommittee, and then we worked with the county attorney's office, and then brought it to this board for a vote, then that recommendation, if it's approved by this board, then it would go forward through you to the county commissioners. Does that sound like a workable solution? It has to happen fairly quickly, and I need someone to volunteer to chair
I'll volunteer.
the subcommittee.
I'll volunteer also to chair it.
Could we do co-chairs?
Fine with that.
Okay.
And we vote?
Say some things too before we drift off into just a subcommittee that I think all of the board should know about. And that is, I first started doing rescue work 15 years ago, and feral cat rescue was first started in 2007. And up until that time, for decades and decades and decades, the policy at Tri-County Shelter had been to, and has been, and still is, to euthanize cats that are feral and are not adoptable. And there was no trap-neuter return policy in place in St. Mary's County. There was no group doing trap-neuter return. And in 2007, when we first started, they were euthanizing at the shelter 550 cats a month. And over the years, that number has dropped due to rescue groups doing spay-neuter, but they were doing spay-neuter before that. There was just no trap-neuter return. And I've seen time and time again, rescue groups take in kittens, but not do anything about the feral mother that's still going to have 3 to 4 litters a year. And there is one TNR group, TNR is Trap Neuter Return, in St. Mary's, and that is Feral Cat Rescue. There's one in Calvert County, that's Friends of Feline, and Rescue Angels is in Charles County. And last year, after 15 years of doing Trap Neuter Return in the 3 counties, that number of 550 a month has dropped to 50 a month. So our own history shows that Trap Neuter Return works. And I've been a big advocate for that.
We're going to have a presentation on that in a few minutes, and the subcommittee may feel that that should be incorporated into the recommendation. Are there others who wish to be a part of this committee, co-chaired by Diane and Steve?
Is that a set thing, or are we going to vote that we want it co-chaired, or we want a single chair?
Since I do have the authority to establish a subcommittee, I'm going to agree to let 2 people co-chair it. We still have room for 2 more board members, up to 2 more if they're interested. And of course, it's also open to non-board members.
I'd like to be on it.
Okay.
Excuse me, can we make a encouragement from someone in the community to be on this?
Okay.
Yeah.
She's got her hand
A
raised,
couple
okay?
hands up.
There's another hand.
Okay. Alice, are you agreeing to be on the committee?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to join the committee as a citizen. I will not be on it as a board member.
Okay. Okay.
I had a couple of questions for Steve, too.
Well, before you continue on, I have a person who has been waiting. Let me just, if we could just hear your comment.
Comments, if I might, in response to your presentation. Full disclosure, I had applied for an opening in the board, not selected.
Can you go up to the microphone, please?
Sure. My name is Robert Sloan. I live in St. Inigo's, and I had applied for a position here, and the commissioners made their choice, and we'll see what happens maybe in the future. But I did have an interest, and I will have an interest for some time. Also, I know Ms. Harris because we had conversation or phone call and correspondence involving a feral cat community that was in St. Inigo's. In response to the question about trapping cats from a feral colony, originally we had 2 cats that we had adopted at Tri-County. They were at the time 9 months old. They were being fostered. And in St. Inigo's where we live, we're able to let them out. They stay close to the house. We have a number of acres. And at one point, a wild feral cat, male cat, showed up and started. Well, he wasn't willing to share the territory of the cats to live there. So we explored the possibility of doing trap neuter or trapping. And we have a live trap that we've used before. And so we started, and we found out that a neighbor where the cat colony lived was going to be moving in November. And I'm sure all of you realize that in cold weather, it's very difficult for feral cats. They suffer. So we decided that what we would do, because they were going to lose a food source, was to start trapping. Animal control can verify the numbers, but I believe we trapped and moved to Tri-County Animal Shelter 12 cats. They were
Considering
kittens.
I don't know which particular one
Okay,
it
no,
is. I cannot
but the
verify your
staff
numbers.
were incredibly good. I will say for Ms. Harris, one of the difficulties that we had was that if you trap an animal, you can't just hang on to it. And her organization was not able to deal with this on a daily basis. The other problem that exists, as I understand it, was that if you want to do trap neuter, you need a veterinarian to do the neutering. And the veterinarian who had been doing it had retired. So that's another complication. I would say that this is a very complex subject. It's not cut and dried. We love cats. The cats that we were catching, most of them were young. We figured that there were 3 generations of cats that appeared over the summer. And we caught kittens, and I should say we, my wife was doing the yeoman work on this, I'll confess. Kittens, some that looked to be big, 6 to 8 weeks old, older cats. One of the cats that we caught was a tipped cat, which meant that it had been neutered. It was a female. And because it had been neutered, we let it go. The others, again, we went and pursued taking it up to the animal shelter. It's difficult to euthanize a cat. It's difficult to do a number of cats. If you have a no-kill shelter here or minimal kill, animals take space. And at some point, you're going to reach a situation, I believe, if you are successful with the adoption program and people giving up cats to be adopted, that there's not going to be a lot of room. And people are familiar with the concept of triage. It's not a comfortable process, but at some point, I'm wondering how you're going to deal with that issue, particularly if there is not a full-time veterinarian working at the shelter. And I'm calling it the shelter. I realize the name will probably change. So as it turns out, this older cat that we got, we started feeding. It was hungry. Over the couple of months, it got to the point where it could come up, it could be touched, it could be held, and then when the winter got really cold, we brought the cat inside. It's still adjusting with our other two cats, primarily one, because they have their own space and they're older now. They're over 11 years old. But they get along and they can spend the night together. And so you can successfully adopt cats that are not dyed in the wool, fully feral. In answer to your question, another complication is, frankly, that an animal that is starving will kill local wildlife if they can do it. That's just what they do. They are a wild animal. There are cats that have been taking over in certain areas where they've been released, where they have to be controlled. This is at a different countries. You may have heard about this, where cats really become invasive species. They reproduce quickly, they're smart, and they're good hunters. So I think there are a lot of complex issues here that need to be considered, and I just wanted to raise these points because we've had some very direct experience with a cat colony and with animal control and the various things that come into play. Ideally, cats would be adopted. Ideally, I agree with an adult cat that cannot really be adopted. If you can neuter it and release it and they can be fed, and you know that they're going to be fed, that's fine. If the food source, the person doing the feeding or the organization doing the feeding, stops doing that, then there's a difficult problem to follow. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will have a subcommittee. As soon as that subcommittee, go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Hi, Dr. Richardson. Hello, everyone. Neil Murphy, Deputy County Attorney. So this is in response to the recommendation to have a subcommittee with non-members. So while I laud the board for getting as much public input as possible, in response to that statement, I reviewed the bylaws, and the part about membership does not appear to contemplate subcommittee members that are not members of the board. So for that reason, I would suggest that we only do members.
So they do not have to be members, but they could attend all of the meetings because they are open meetings, correct?
That's correct. But the actual membership of the subcommittee.
Thank you for pointing that out.
To only have members of the board.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane, did you have additional questions?
Yeah, just, you said that Tri-County Shelter isn't euthanizing any kittens and that they're giving them all out to rescue groups.
That's what I was told by a now former employee that now works for us.
Because that's just really hard to believe.
I can only go by information I was given. I don't have no records, I can't verify, but
Yeah.
that's what I was told.
They routinely call me to take kittens out of the shelter because they know they're going to have to euthanize.
But that's what she told me.
That's what he means.
I say no all the time because there's so many that I'm taking from the community already, and there's just not enough
Well,
room.
they told me they do not put down kittens. They find a rescue group that will take them, 100%. They said they do not. Again, this is a former employee that is now an employee of ours very recently, so.
But I also think that it's like really hard to find people that would want to feed babies because you have to wake up every 2 or 3 hours, and
Right.
I'm curious about that. I can't imagine that would happen.
Okay,
Something else that you said, St. Mary's County has no policy on euthanasia. Doesn't St. Mary's County and Charles County decide what happens at Tri-County Shelter?
No,
No, who decides what happens at?
they do.
Who's
We
they?
could, the shelter, but we don't operate the shelter, they do. We could tell them we think this one needs to or that do, but their policies specifically say they make that decision. We do not.
And I'm gathering from this meeting tonight, everybody understands that we're going to get full like Tri-County does, and they have to euthanize because they don't have enough room.
Well, that I can't speak to what's going to happen, but we know there are some euthanizations. Most of it's because it's health. I can't tell you what the policies are. I can tell you what the commissioners have dictated is going to occur. It's going to be a low kill, no kill. How we get there, we're 9 months away. So.
A helpful way to get there would be trap, neuter, return.
Well, and we have a presentation coming up on that.
Have a great opportunity because the commissioners are asking for your help.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Steve.
So let's move on, and basically, we will do a subcommittee. It'll be co-chaired by Steve and Diane. Rita will be a member. Alice and Melinda will be citizens and can be present at every meeting. And what we'll do, but not during this meeting, we'll talk about how to set up so that we're in compliance with open meeting laws. Subcommittees follow open meeting laws, which means advance notice, agenda, that kind of thing. But we'll talk about that. We've been through that training several times. So we'll do that. And then at some point, if the co-chairs could give me an idea of when they would like their recommendations to be reviewed by the county attorney, I can line that up and save some time there. And then after that, we can also schedule a special meeting in addition to our January meeting. So it's going to be up to the committee. And with that, I'm going to move on because I've had Alice Burton here, who has done extensive work with train, trap, neuter, and return.
So I do have a flash drive, but I wanted to ask what the time expectation is.
Please come up to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what the time
We
expectation.
typically end by 8 o'clock, so.
And I'd like to be able to have a discussion. So,
Yes.
So I do have the flash drive that if somebody could, maybe, anybody? Joy?
This is happening, a point of information.
Yes.
Are the subcommittee
Feel free.
agendas
I'd be more than
and
happy to sit out here.
available on the website? I don't recall seeing those.
They are. They are. Mhm. That's one of the open meetings requirements.
Madam, so you are restricting the subcommittee to 4 members of the board? Is
So
that,
that we don't have a quorum.
okay? Because I did wanted to participate on it.
We can add you because 1, 2, 3, you would be 4.
Let me know when you want me to change.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So who is it? Steve, myself?
You two are the co-chairs. Cesar, Rita
The board membership.
are the board members. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I had a lovely introduction planned for you, Alice, but I'm going to save time.
I think I've kind of made myself familiar to
Basically,
everyone by
just
now.
say that it's a
So,
pleasure to have you
yes.
back again. Some of us had the opportunity to hear your presentation before, and we're very interested in it.
Thank you so much. So, I do have the presentation ready, but what I'd like to do is address some points first. And I think that we can kind of address the points first and then kind of go quickly through the presentation. I know your first name. What is your last name?
Tuttle.
Tuttle. Okay, Mr. Tuttle. So I want to address some things that were brought up tonight. And you did say, like, what happens if, they just stop feeding the cats? They'll disappear. Well, the beauty of these folks feeding these cats is that now it's a managed colony. It's a managed colony that they're able to watch. They know when they have been spayed and neutered. They know if another one, for some reason, they get dumped, every once in a while. And they're not going all over the place looking for food. They know exactly what time that feeder is coming. It's, my mom had 9 kids, and we were like a row of ducks, trust me. But it's how you have to be. And I will tell you, I don't know if anybody has driven down there to see the site.
I know the site.
Okay.
Very well.
You literally cannot tell there are cats there where they feed. you may see a cat or two, but you will not see any trash. These caregivers are picking up trash that, you know, I mean, the cats aren't eating bags of potato chips and drinking Miller Lite. So they're being very conscious about taking care of these cats, and I was amazed at how clean it was. And there haven't been, to the best of my knowledge, any complaints about this site. And again, like I said earlier, I was chief of animal control for 14 years, and if I feel like the humans are in danger, children are in danger, I would be the first one to say we need to relocate. But these cats they're being managed properly. So, and as far as Mr. Walker's wildlife in Maryland, I think you're having the same problem I'm having about getting two different answers, because cats are not considered wildlife in Maryland. The only cat considered wildlife is a bobcat. All the others are domestic. They're considered companion animals.
I'll show you the law.
Yeah, and show that to me, because we're having a hard time as Maryland deciding and making a stand on that. So, but again, these are some of the things, and I want to explain first. You can go ahead and start that if you'd like. So this is about why St. Mary's should embrace TNR. And we're going to go over what's a community cat, understanding TNR, and quite honestly, my favorite on humane deterrence, because this isn't just about the cats. This program is about the community. It's about listening to the folks who have a problem with the cats, or maybe their property is being destroyed. Like, let's talk to them. Let's see how we can help them. As a ACO for so many years, I had to listen to both sides, and it's very important. You can go ahead and switch. So the history of the cats have been around for over 10,000 years. Like, we know that, and they're very versatile. They can be out in the snow, they can be out in the rain. These guys are hardy. And when we talk about recommendations for colonies, we want to make sure they're also taken care of. And trap, neuter, return is never about keeping sick or injured cats out there or returning them. These are healthy, thriving cats. So where did they come from? We don't know. We really don't know. There are different ideas, just like the ponies on Chincoteague. But cat litter was not invented until 1947. That means they were outside. These were outdoor animals. So unless you lived by like, say, Point Lookout and had a bucket of sand in your living room, they were outside. Steve. Oh, by the way, that picture was my Bobby and Misha. I just wanted to throw that out there. Give them some credit. There they go. Okay, we can go now. They got their credit. So what is a community cat? When we're talking about the cats in the colonies, they're community cats. Feral cats, feral is a level of socialization. The community cats are the ones that are living outdoors. They're living in these different colonies. They may be called feral cats. They may be called tomcats. Some of them, a lot of them live on the docks because the fishermen feed them the scraps. It's just like ducks. They're out there. So they're all over. But again, the feral cat is the level of socialization. You may go out there to a colony anywhere, and there may be some that rub up against you. And I'll explain in just a few minutes why those cats should stay out there. Steve? So the reason they should stay out there is they don't belong in the shelter, because just because they seem friendly when they're out there, they may change when they get into the shelter. You're taking a cat that's in, say, the colony that's in the spotlight right now. They're in this beautiful environment. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful down there. They're happy, they're thriving, and there may be a couple that are friendly, but you take those friendly cats because you think that you know best and that somebody should adopt them. Then you put them in a cage that's like 2 by 3. They're not going to be happy, and there's a good chance that they're not going to use a litter box. And then they also may have that fight or flight mentality. And then, again, what about what about socializing them? I personally tried to socialize a semi-feral cat for 5 years, and I did everything I possibly could, and in the end, it didn't work. And I ended up having to socialize her. Now, that was a human error because it was all human mistakes, because that cat was dropped off. She was in a colony, then dumped in another colony. She didn't mix well with that colony, so she wasn't thriving. I brought her into my home for 5 years, and then the litter box issues continued, and you could only deal with that. For so long, you do all the medical tests, and you do everything, but it's heartbreaking. Steve? So what is trap, neuter, return? It's bringing the cat in, humanely trapping it, spaying or neutering it, vaccinating, ear tipping the left ear, and returning it to their outdoor home. This isn't about us taking 3 cats and releasing them somewhere. We're not introducing new cats to the ecosystem. They're already there. They're already there. Steve? So why trapping and euthanizing doesn't work? Bottom line, if it worked, I wouldn't be sitting here. We wouldn't be talking about this because of all the trapping and euthanizing over the years in St. Mary's County. All the trapping and euthanizing that I personally did in Arlington County, and I assisted citizens with, it just doesn't work. You're also going to get more volunteers to help you, more cooperation for trapping cats and bringing them in and spaying and neutering them and being humane. But again, you're not going to get volunteers. It's costly and it's dangerous. It's absolutely dangerous because your staff is then holding these cats. And I can't even say this enough. This is a brand new shelter, and this is going to be a resource center. And this is going to be a place, even if you don't decide to go with resource center as the name, this is a place that people are going to come. You want them to be proud of the shelter. You want them to bring, on Saturdays, make it a stop every Saturday. They're going to bring a bag of food. They're going to just look at the animals because it's going to be a big, beautiful facility. It's not going to be depressing. And this isn't a slight against Tri-County, but Tri-County, I'm 53. It's a year older than me. That's a couple years right there. So I'm just saying, it's not the most optimistic place to go. Again, it's inhumane. It just doesn't work. Steve? So why are communities embracing TNR? I will tell you, when Arlington County first decided to look into their trap neuter return program, I was chief of animal control and I was completely against it. I was like, it doesn't work. There's just no way. I mean, it just doesn't work. I thought it was inhumane and completely against it. Fortunately, they didn't listen to me, and they did it. And 6 months after they started it, I saw the positive benefits. All of a sudden, I saw less kittens coming into the shelter, and the ones that were coming in, we had fosters for them. But the kittens, after 3 years, the number of kittens decreased so much that we were calling other shelters who weren't doing TNR and asking if they had bottle babies that needed help. I mean, that's a pretty classy problem to have. But again, I was against it, and we called all these different, they called different localities that were doing TNR, and they said, how is it going? They're like, it's the best thing we ever did. What they did not find was a locality that did TNR, they started it and stopped it because it wasn't working. Steve? Oh, and we don't have to go back, but the most important part about that is that for the county commissioners, I think, is that it saves taxpayer dollars. It's going to, when this shelter opens, you want to keep that population down. And I know that Mr. Sloan, I believe, and Diane had brought up about, the population and the shelter. And the way to do that is when an animal comes in, and the intent for that animal is to be part of the population, to be taken in, you're going to do managed intake, hopefully. And that is to counsel the person. The shelter should be the absolute last resort. What we want to do is we want to keep the pet with the owner. That should be the goal. What kind of assistance do they need? And again, the more pets, the more animals in that shelter, the higher the risk of disease. The less animals, the healthier that shelter is going to be. So the vacuum effect. That is not my cat. I cannot vacuum my cats, but my brother and sister-in-law can vacuum their cat. Elvis loves it. But the vacuum effect, what that is once you take an animal out of an area, just completely remove it, you're opening up a resource. That resource could be food, it could be water, it could be even a mulch pile that the sun beats down on at 3 p.m. and a fox has found that. But if you remove that fox, guess what? You may get a coyote. It's about these animals are living peacefully with us. Leave them there. But if you start taking cats out, more are going to come in, or wildlife. But what you want to do, and you want to say, well, how do you prevent that? Get this colony, get it completely stabilized, and then move out and get the colonies around there so that they all stay in place. Steve? So these are the numbers from Arlington County. So in 2009, which is the year that we started TNR, we had 913 nuisance cat complaints. Now, just to give you an idea, so Arlington County, it's only 26 square miles. It's very small, but it's 224,000 people. So a lot of people on top of one another. And in 2015, this is 6 years after doing TNR, the nuisance cat complaints went down to 47. I mean, that's incredible. And all of a sudden, we were able to concentrate, within months, we were able to concentrate on the things that we should be doing, as opposed to trying to mediate between neighbors. And the neighbors who were complaining about cats, all of a sudden, when we were giving them the deterrence that we're going to talk about, they were happy. And as soon as you spay or neuter a cat, it modifies their behavior. They're not fighting over dates on Saturday night. They're fine. They basically, literally, they go into retirement right away. And they don't tear things up. And if they do, we're going to have some deterrence for you. The total cat intake for 2009 was 1,276. In 2015, it went down to 884. That's not a huge decrease, is it? Out of that 884, a lot of those cats were being transferred in because we didn't have cats to adopt. So we were going to all these other localities and bringing cats in. Even today, the Arlington shelter is going down to Louisiana, Texas, bringing cats in. I mean, again, it's a fancy, classy problem. They don't have enough cats, but they're able to be a resource for other people around the country, other shelters around the country. Steve? So, when we did TNR, one of the great things was that the caregivers that hated us as ACOs, all of a sudden we were able to go to them and say, we're here to help you. We want to help you with these surgeries, and we want to, give you some tips on how to take care of the colonies, but we need you to take care of these colonies. And it's important that they keep the area clean, and we don't, and the shelter should be put out if they need that shelter. If they're in like a natural wooded environment, the cats will find their own shelter. but keep it inconspicuous. You don't want to draw attention, not just to make it better for the neighbors, but to make it better for the cats. We don't want to draw attention to them. Sometimes folks will go ahead and put out outdoor litter boxes. That'll prevent them from going to the neighbor's garden and using that as a litter box. And set up a feeding schedule. Right now, the colony that we've all been speaking about, they have them on a feeding schedule. And when they're done, and I've gone down and spoken with them and talked to them, when they're done, they take all the food up. They stand there and wait for them to finish, and they pull it up. That is how to prevent wildlife from using that as a resource. And it also helps with the vulture issue. The only reason the vultures are there is for that food. And if the food isn't there as a resource, they have no reason to be there. But they're also looking at dumpsters too as a resource, the vultures. So that's another thing to think about. Steve? Okay, so the humane deterrents. So these are things that I want animal control, each truck, to have a small stash. And some of this stuff is free. The used coffee grounds, Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, they all save the big bags because folks use them for gardening. Orange, you can use the orange peels, throw it out in the mulch. And these are the things to talk to the community about. If you see a cat that's eating out of a trash can, I guarantee you that cat has not opened up that trash can. A raccoon has done it, and the cat now is taking advantage of that. The one up top, the Scarecrow, it's a motion-activated sprinkler. And, so of course you need a water source, but I will tell you, we used to use those for white-tailed deer in Arlington because there's no hunting in Arlington, so the wildlife just kind of walk around like they own the place. So we would rent those out. They'd give us $50. The folks, we'd give it to them. They'd bring it back. They'd get their $50. The one elderly lady, I went up there and I said, "Are you done with this?" And she said, "You know what, honey? I think I'm going to keep it." She goes, "I don't see any cats, no deer, and the kids have stopped running through my yard." So she kept it. So again, these are things that we're giving the other folks an answer. We're not just saying, the cats are staying here, forget it, you have no choice. It's about making everybody happy. So, Steve? And that's it. And that's Bobby and Misha again. So, Bobby and Misha. Does anybody have any?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So what is the average cost when you trap the cats and you take them in? Do you have a particular veterinarian that you guys use? You're able to do that at your shelter?
Answer that for here.
Yeah, you can answer it for locally, yes.
Yeah, we take I take about 500 cats a year up to Calvert Well Pet in Huntingtown, and it's 50 for the spay, 7 for the rabies, 35 for the neuter, and 7 for the rabies. And in addition to that, for every cat that I take up there, the ones that we do trap, neuter, return on, we spend $20 more and get them a multi-advantage and a distemper shot.
So you said 50 for the...
It's not absolutely necessary.
So you say 50 for the spades?
57 for a rabies and a spay, and 42 for a neuter and a rabies, and that's a lot cheaper. I've been told, I don't know how to research this, it's too hard to find out because there's so many factors involved, but I've been told it's $100 per cat that goes through Tri-County Shelters doors because of animal control and the employees and housing those cats for 3 days.
And currently the county covers that cost, or your organization covers that cost? For the spade? Mm-hmm.
Our organization relies on donations.
Okay, thank you so much.
And if I die tomorrow, this county is going to be in trouble with trap, neuter, return here. I'll tell you that.
And I would like to add, when she was talking about the $100, that was and I'm not sure if you got it, but it was the $100 is the cost per cat to go through the system at Tri-County, whether the disposition is adoption, return to owner, or euthanasia. So you can see that the cost is double, pretty much. Now, there is so much money out there right now. People are going to call me right now after I said that, but we're helping some folks in southwestern Virginia. We just finished a 45 cat TNR clinic, Homer Trails, that I work for. We just did that. We're going to be doing a 50 cat clinic in November, 100 cats in December. And you have different groups like Best Friends, you have Petco, and not only are they helping with spay-neuter, but they're also helping with vaccinations. So so right now there's a Angels of Assisi's. We work with them a lot. It's a rescue group, and they have a beautiful facility for surgeries. And I'm just going to give you an example. If we send some cats there for surgery, and they have to charge us, say, $10 per microchip, and that's just a number to throw out there. What we do is we purchase the microchips ourselves at a bulk rate, and then send those along with the cats. And then they're able to use that. Now, not every vet will do that, but there are a lot of them that will do this. And I think, in my opinion, the key to getting vets involved is to really give them the attention they deserve, these vets. Their vets right now are extremely backed up. This pandemic, I can't even tell you how it affected shelters across the country. We're seeing shelters that never euthanized for space, or haven't done it, say, in 10 years, and they had to euthanize for space. We shut down all spay-neuters for months because it wasn't considered essential. There were only a few doing it across the country. And what it did to animal welfare is it's catastrophic, and we're all trying to recover from that. And we never want to see that again. And now we know. But not to end on a low note, but this TNR. You guys, you know where I live, so if it doesn't work, you're going to come after me. But I'm passionate about this. I travel across the country, and there's a way to make this work. There's absolutely a way to make this work. And, relocating cats is also not the answer. Leave them there where they're happy and healthy and thriving.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you originally trap, neuter, and release, you give them the rabies, tetanus, and things like that. So how do you keep up with the cats that are in these colonies and know that they need their rabies shot now?
So the caregivers, that's a great question, because the caregivers, they're building a relationship with the shelter and animal control, and also the TNR organizations, and they have this paperwork, and you work with them on getting these rabies vaccinations updated. There are studies out there showing that a 1-year rabies vaccination has lasted up to 7 years. It's just like humans. When they get their rabies pre-exposure, if they're working with animals, they have to get their titer test done. And some people I know, they went 22 years without having to get another rabies vaccination. But again, that is part of one of the wonderful components about this, is that you're able to work with them. And just so that you folks know, so in order to give a feral cat a rabies vaccination, you trap it, and they will go in the trap a second time. I'll go in the trap if I'm hungry enough, to be honest with you. You get them in there. All you need is a metal separator, and you hold them to one side. You don't even have to anesthetize them. They don't have to go under, and you just give them the vaccination, and it's done. It takes a couple minutes.
So, because I know that one of you said it was difficult to trap these cats in the area that is, I guess, in question or whatever right now. So that's why I'm wondering, how are you keeping up with the rabies shots.
So, this is a really good question also. So if you know that you're going to be trapping, you're going to prepare that colony. And the way to prepare that colony for trapping is not to feed. And I always suggest, so when we did the 45 cats just a few weeks ago, our goal was 30 cats. And we stopped feeding, had the caregiver stop feeding for 48 hours before the trapping actually started. And they talked to all their neighbors so that the cats weren't going to their neighbors and begging for food, and all of a sudden we started trapping more than we had expected. So what we did is we called the local vets to say, if we have extra cats, can you guys accommodate? And they were able to do that. It was just an amazing show of community. But again, you have to make sure that you're not feeding.
And so that right now that is coordinated with the group that is feeding in that area, so that you know when to.
Oh, you mean where I was trapping, or
the
here?
Area that is.
Yes. Yeah, we always recommend doing rabies vaccines, and I will tell you there are some cats down at that colony that still need to be TNR'd. They still need to be either spayed or neutered. And I did write an email to the county commissioners and said that is my recommendation, that they all be done, and I'll work with Diane to make sure that gets done. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited about being down here.
So currently at this time for the area that's in question, most of them have been neutered?
Most of them that I know
I
of.
think most of them, maybe half of them.
Yeah.
We're trapping every Thursday.
Last time I was there, I counted 16 cats. I'm sure there's more than 16 there. That was just the ones that I could see out in the open. What is the total number of cats in that colony? So we really don't know. So we could have over to 300 to 400 cats?
No way.
No way? It's okay.
Oh, no. If there were
100?
3, no.
Okay.
No.
50?
No. I would say if you're looking, if you saw 16, I think you could probably add another 40% to that. So maybe like 22 or something, 20, 22.
Feeding time?
I was there in the evening.
Yeah, so they were waiting.
They're all coming.
Yeah, they were waiting for the caregiver. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
So out of that, let's say, I'm just going to go with a happy number of 22 cats.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the 22 cats, you would say 10% are neutered?
let us get back to you on that, because I don't want to give you a number that's not correct.
And the ones that are fixed have gotten the shots. The ones
Yes.
that aren't neutered, I'm going to assume did not get any rabies or anything.
Exactly. And that's what
Yeah, when we do catch them, they will.
Do you put a chip in them at that time too?
No. Well, we are doing those in certain areas, but again, that's an added cost.
Okay, I'm just thinking that that might be a good idea. I know it's an added cost, but then you would know which ones, when they got their shots.
It's a
I guess
beautiful
that's my
idea.
concern.
Yeah.
It's going to pay for that.
Right,
Yeah.
but I guess my concern is making sure that they've got their shots and that they are healthy, because, you don't want, either someone to be injured, or, the cat to be unhealthy. You kind of
we
want to
can-
make sure that.
Sure, and not to cut you off, I'm sorry, I apologize. But the ones that we're getting ready to do in Galax, Virginia, is where I've told you we're doing these events. And I know I've done Chickatig, Tangier, all over the place, but right now we're concentrating on Galax. And we're going to start in November doing the microchips, because we've been able to get a quantity of them at a very good price. Because if you take your dog or cat to the vet to get microchipped, it's probably, I'm going to say, maybe $45 and then another $45 to register it. If you register it, a lot of people don't even do that. With these chips that people are able to use for TNR, they don't have a lot of the bells and whistles. So they're able to get them for between $4 and $6 a piece. And what happens is, it goes back to the TNR organization, and the TNR organization knows which cat and where it is. So you're right. It is a great way to keep up with those vaccine records. But microchips are just becoming available to, people out there with regular pets, with these house pets. It's an expensive venture, but when you're looking at, do we want to do microchips for everybody, or do we want to do more spay neuters? Obviously, we're going to do more spay neuters, but that's what the grants are for, also for microchips.
I have a question about the food.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you cannot control public behavior, and I know that when your caregivers go, they feed, they take the food up. Is there any successful education campaign that you can do that the general public's not going to go down there and feed and leave food? I think that may be a problem. I've been guilty of doing that several years ago myself.
Sure.
Went down there and just dropped a bunch of food, so then now all the other animals are coming and it's posing a public potential problem. Is there anything you can do to help the community know, don't feed the cats there?
I think that the best way to communicate that is through signage. And, you know, I think that this colony would be a great way to, as an example, to show the county that we are compassionate about all animals. You know, we're not going out, you know, if someone calls you and says, the squirrel, you know, is out in my yard and I think it may bite my child. If the squirrel's acting healthy, I guarantee you Joy's not going to go out and get it, and she shouldn't. And it's about showing compassion, and let's put a sign up and say, this is a managed cat colony. These cats are being taken care of. Please do not feed them for their safety as well as yours. And it's about, you know, I get very passionate about this because it's about embracing these cats and the people. Show these kids out there how to take care of animals and how to live peacefully.
I have a question. Would it be out of order for this board to make a recommendation to the county commissioners to resolve the problem immediately for the time being until the subcommittee can meet? I'm putting signage out there saying that this is a managed cat colony and that no one is to feed other than the organizations currently feeding them until we come up with a comprehensive plan on how to manage the colony. Would that be allowed?
Steve?
You can make whatever recommendation you want tonight. You can have it signed. It'll go over there tomorrow. So when will they take it up? Truth is, it'll probably be 10 days now because Tuesdays there's no commission meeting. They have to hear it in an open meeting. But it will get to them. So if you send it over tomorrow, the county administrator will send it to every one of the commissioners. So you can make whatever recommendation you want. We will get it to them. As soon as you sign it, we send it over that day.
If I can, I would like so we can say that we've addressed this issue for the community and kind of ease some of the concerns. I would like to make a motion that we ask the county commissioners if they would be okay on putting signage out saying that this is a controlled cat colony and only the organizations that are authorized to be feeding them until the subcommittees can meet and address this issue in a more comprehensive response. Sorry, that was a little long-winded.
You know we're going to ask you to repeat.
Recorded? No.
It is, and we'll go back to it.
It actually gave me a chance to see a close-up of Steve's tie. All the cats. I hadn't noticed that earlier.
Should we define who's feeding these cats currently? Because right now there's no, just saying that the authorized people, who's authorizing this?
Well, who are the managing organizations that are feeding these cats now?
It's not organizations.
It's individuals.
It's a colony manager person who took it upon themselves.
Who is this? Who is this individual? Do we know?
I know.
We know. I mean, I don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
Put it out in public.
Now we're getting a little bit cloudy. I thought these were cat rescue organizations that were managing these colonies.
No, this is an individual.
Okay.
Who is going out? Him and I think his wife are going out every day and feeding.
Woman when they can't do
Yeah,
it. And
they.
it's all over the county.
Yeah.
Colonies that citizens are managing, and they contact us for help with trap, neuter, return.
Okay.
And then traps, and then I provide transportation to Calvert Well Pet and the money to get the cats vaccinated and spayed and neutered.
And that's normally how it works. Normally, the TNR organizations are not out there feeding.
Okay.
They're assisting folks with the surgeries, the behind the curtain kind of thing, but the caregivers are out there feeding, they're cleaning, and they're managing and monitoring.
People see cats, they want to feed them.
Yes.
So I don't think we can make a recommendation to state on a county property or state property that
I agree, I
we're
withdraw.
authorizing, that there's an authorized group. If that, we don't, first of all, know the name, we don't know who they are, we can't place that responsibility on them if they have not been authorized, so I
We
don't.
do know the name, I just would rather not say
But I
the
think
name.
I think our county attorney might,
I was misinformed.
might
I
have
maybe-
concern about that, so.
I assumed it was an organization that's working with the county, like maybe Small or these other organizations that were actually doing.
No, I'm sorry if I
No, that's
led
okay.
you-
I withdraw my motion.
Okay.
But I will say that I've met with the main individual who feeds, and, and he even communicated that while he's out there, and he was the one I was talking about, like cleans and keep upkeep.
Beer cans.
Yeah, and folks come by and actually thank him for what he's doing. And I think that that's a good thing to know too, because, he really is doing a service to the community and to the cats.
And they donate money to them.
Yes.
I would be willing to make the motion again if we can get in contact with this individual, and if they would work with the county, I would reinstate my motion.
I'm going to defer to our county attorney. My concern is that if the county places those signs there and something happens to prevent the people from going to feed, and there's an issue with cats, then it seems like it puts some responsibility on the county.
That's true, but also my understanding is that there's a policy within Rexon Park that there is to be no feeding of wild animals on county property. There may already be signs. I'm not sure. I know that those were in the works.
Okay.
So regardless of who it is, they're not supposed to be doing it.
Okay.
So
Which may be why nobody's saying their name.
Okay.
we can,
Well, no, I wouldn't say it, honestly, I wouldn't say it anyways.
I think that can become a part of the recommendations if the subcommittee feels that
Definitely.
that's appropriate.
So as for this colony is concerned, is there any record keeping going on, or is just
There is record keeping.
there
Yes,
record keeping?
there is. And we want to get it even more comprehensive so that we have all the shots updated, we have everybody spayed and neutered, and I think it would be a great thing for, again, to use this colony as like a prototype almost, as an example.
Like a
of what-
pilot program?
Yeah, and they don't have to, register the cats or anything like that, but if there is any type of incident, they would have the documentation to show that they were spayed, neutered. This is, and they're up to date on rabies, or if they still need a rabies vaccine. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times when I was an animal control officer, I did a bite report on a dog or cat that was sitting on someone's couch that bit the plumber who weren't up to date on a rabies vaccine. There's probably more so than not.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't want to cut this short. However, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we are a little bit over time right now. So, Alice, do you have any closing comments for us?
I just want to say that, I'm so happy to be back in Southern Maryland with my friends and family, and to be able to do the things that I do professionally and help St. Mary's. I lived in Calvert before, and I live in St. Mary's now, and I'm here if anybody needs to reach out to me, ask me questions. And I'm really looking forward to the new shelter. I've been to many of the meetings, and I'm very excited. And any way I can help, I think I'm pretty easy to work with. So I'm not going to come in and tell everybody how to do it. Well, maybe, but I'll be nice. I'll bring brownies or something, but yeah. But thank you so much.
Thank you for taking my questions. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for another wonderful presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, I just had one other item, and that was in preparation for the January meeting, which is a regular board meeting. We will be doing, electing officers for chair, vice chair, and secretary. So we will take nominations from the floor in that order. Please consider if you would like to take on one of those roles. With that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I would like some board time.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Melinda.
So I just wanted to make a statement. This is my last meeting. My 2.5-year tenure is up in December, and I will not be asking to be reinstated on the board, nor do I think that would happen, but regardless. I just want to share with this board, regardless of what's going on, I think the idea of the board was to have a balance between the animal welfare community and people who could work with the county and maintain some fiscal responsibility. I think that needs to be maintained. I've seen this board over the 2.5 years since the first meeting grow, shrink, grow again. I think we're in a little bit of a flux right now as to how many board members we really should have, and there probably needs to be some right sizing. I don't believe I'm the only person whose tenure is ending. I don't know what's going on with those people, but if the other people like me are ending their tenure with the board, I think the imbalance between animal rescue, animal welfare representatives on the board versus other members is going to be off. And I just hope that this board takes that into consideration as they look at their membership rosters going into next year. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you very much.